I'm sure we all remember the story from the Gospel of Luke of Martha and Mary. As Martha is going about preparing this meal for Jesus, she gets more and more agitated, more and more upset. And I think not simply at Mary, but also at Jesus for really not doing anything about this. And we hear in the midst of this story, Martha, burdened with much serving, came to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." Martha is anxious. And why is that? It's because she has made the determination on her own about what Jesus needs. She has decided that being that good hostess is to take charge and to be in control of the situation and to make things happen the way that she believes they should happen. And if we're honest with ourselves, many of us fall into that same kind of trap. We open our hearts and our lives to it, but ultimately, what are we doing as we do that? We're creating anxiety in our lives because it is so easy to do that. It is far easier to create anxiety than to experience peace. And we create that anxiety because we think we should be in control. We should be in charge. We are the reasons that things happen. And if we don't do it, no one else will. Do we ever have said those kind of things to ourselves? But Paul reminds us of how to be freed from anxiety and to find that true peace. Have no anxiety at all, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. What Paul is reminding us is that when we lose our focus on Christ and rely on self-determination, it is there that anxiety will always be created. We, I'm sure, have all heard the old adage, pray as though everything depends on God, and work as though all things depend on yourself. As I always say to people, that's actually heresy. Because the reality is, everything depends upon God. Nothing depends upon us. And we need to remember that. Only when we truly remember that God is actually always in charge in all things, at all times, in all places, and that we are truly called to truly believe that all things work for the good of those who love God. Now, this does not mean that God makes all the things that happen in our lives happen, but rather, He can make use of everything that happens in our lives for our good, as long as we trust and as long as we are willing to put our faith truly in the Lord. But again, the problem is we think we need to be in charge. We think we need to be in control. And when that is the way of our life, it is the way of anxiety, and we will never find peace in that direction. Our job is not to make things happen, but rather to cooperate with God, to participate in God's plan for our life. Our prayers should ultimately be directed towards growing in understanding of those plans, because that is the only way we can truly produce God's fruit in our life. And really, as we listen to the more anxious we are feeling in our lives, the more we are moving away from God. That's the telltale. If the anxiety is growing in your life, then you're depending too much on yourself. And you're not really giving your hearts and your lives over to the Lord. Because when we do that, that is where we will discover the peace that our God desires us to be living in. God never desires you to be anxious, to live in anxiety. He wants you to truly know that peace of heart that comes from Him and Him alone. Again, if we truly want to embrace all of this, we need to truly listen to Paul's words to us today. Have no anxiety at all, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And this, we will truly lose our anxiety and find true peace.